Howdy, hey folks, welcome back to another edition of the Wednesday Word. Righty Roo gang, so today's topic is going to be replenishing creativity in creative work, especially when you're working in marketing and public relations. So this question actually comes from a presentation I gave to some college students back at Ball State, my alma mater, chirp chirp. Asked me how I stay creative with the kind of work that I do. How do you find new ideas? How do you stay motivated? How do you keep interested in the work that's going on? I gave some answer around reading a bunch of things and keeping focused on topics of the world and the usual stuff like that. The longer I thought about it though, the more I feel like I whiffed that answer. Reading things does help, for sure, but I think I realized that I was really struggling with finding creativity. In my own journey, I was really looking for how to revitalize the kind of stuff I was producing. So me being naturally curious, which if you remember from our previous video was the #1 trait for content writers, I wanted a better answer. I put more thought to it, and here's what I came up with. First and foremost, I want to level set and say it's okay to not be creative or feeling creative all the time. In creative fields like marketing and PR, you feel like you might be expected to just always be on 24/7. This pressure to always be on and perform is a really tough mindset to get out of, or at least try to circumvent for a time if you really need a break. Creativity is one of those things that the more you chase it, the harder it is to catch. So my biggest hurdle in understanding how I could recapture my own creativity was letting go of that mindset of having to always be on and be creative. For me, that became focusing on other activities, like taking long walks around the neighborhood with my dog. I'm sure somewhere we'll squeeze in a little picture of her. But the big thing is, don't try to chase it down. Let creativity come to you. Now you're thinking, that's all well and good. I love taking long walks too, Alex. But my clients still need stuff on deadline, so what do I do about that when I'm really not feeling or finding that creativity? I think one of the big tricks about creativity is half of creativity is process. I'd say what many of us think of as doing creative work is really getting up and starting something. Not feeling creative kind of starts leaning into motivation and interest, and I think some of those are some floatier terms for struggling to connect with the work you're doing. And a faster way to reconnect with the work is to pick it apart and templatize it to figure out where some of your roadblocks are and how you can work across that. For instance, these Wednesday Word videos, it's really easy for me to say, I'm not really feeling very creative, I don't want to talk about a topic this week. But by implementing a process for building this, recording it, editing, and shipping it out, that allows me to do the work and stop worrying so much if I'm really capturing something creative. I think process gets undervalued in the whole conversation about being creative and the kind of marketing and PR work that we do. It might appear when you're writing something like a blog post. Have you ever felt the editing part is easier than the drafting part? The drafting part's important because that's how process manifests itself when you're writing. That draft is born from understanding the people you're supposed to be talking to, the topic at hand, limitations like word count. Those constraints and the deadline you put yourself on allow creativity to foster on its own without you necessarily needing to force it. Then when you're done with your draft, you can spend time in your process editing and adding or replenishing creativity in the piece itself. All in all though, the ability to build yourself a process to get through the churn of that work gives you the space to rediscover creativity in the work itself and reinvigorate you to bring more creative energy to the work that you're doing. And for yourself, it's important too to engage with content that falls way outside the scope of typical business stuff. I think I got half the answer right with the student back at Ball State when I talked about reading lots of things, but I think being more specific about that, it's reading stuff that you never thought would have anything to do with the work that you're doing. Creativity, curiosity, all of these traits go hand in hand. And to feed them, you have to give them more data. They have to ingest more data in. And you find that data from reading, watching, interacting, engaging with all different types of content from pretty much every sector you can think of. I think a lot of folks' first reaction when they get stuck with creativity is to go buy the business self-help book about how to be creative with work. And that gives pieces of it, but you really need to, again, expand that scope. It's really key to look beyond the typical business book. When I get stuck, I do read some of those businessy things like Morning Brew, Daily Upside, those kinds of regular email newsletters. But I'm also an avid reader of all kinds of different books, magazines, short story stuff, That includes fiction and nonfiction too. I watch all kind of random shows on TV. My music taste is probably eclectic. I listen to pretty much everything. But it's important to explore this larger scope of produced content out there in all of its different forms. That exploration increases the odds of success, that you're going to find ideas you can join together or find new directions to take your work to re-engage with creativity. A resource I use a lot for this is Firefox's Pocket. If you're like me and you remember the days of StumbleUpon, oh, I miss that. R.I.P. So sad. Pocket, I think, shares a lot with StumbleUpon. It goes and finds articles all over the web, and then delivers them in an easy-to-read format. I like the way they select topics. I've read about how they age cheese in a French cave for 100 years, how whale song has changed in the past decades, or about how quantum mechanics and stuff like that works. For me, finding new ideas or sources for information, it's a go-to place for me. If you're trying to foster this amongst a team, your agency, what have you, I think there's an exercise, especially for the writing piece, to help folks better connect ideas together and add more water to the creativity well. For that, I go to free writing a lot. So free writing is you take a topic and just write about it for some amount of time, but it could be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you let folks just write about things. These days, there's a whole bunch of free topic generators out there. Regardless how you get that topic, it should be something, at least I think, outside of work. So instead of having someone write about the marketing plan for client XYZ, have them write about their favorite memory from childhood. It's one of their favorite dreams from recent memory. Or whether they want pineapple on their pizza or not. Literally, the options are endless. Free writing and the association that your mind does as you start putting ideas together can jumpstart a lot of creative work and let your folks go back into the work of writing for marketing and PR with a refreshed sense of things. It's a relatively easy exercise that anyone can do, and there's a lot of power in letting folks unleash that creative potential in a way outside of a typical press release or blog post or long-form article for a client. So that's how I replenish creativity for myself and folks who have worked with me. Hopefully this was a more comprehensive answer. I feel at least a little better about it. Creativity is important to this work, but it's easy to get trapped in a cycle of feeling like you need it because you're always on 24/7. So if nothing else, make sure you take time to rethink your mindset and how you're framing creativity in the work, both for yourself and your team. The nuggets of creativity are in there, but it takes a good combination of process and the freedom to think about new ideas to unearth that creativity. That's what I got for this Wednesday Word. I'll see you soon for the next one.